Hello again, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons.
And I'm Carla Garrett.
You know how you could tell? Because it's on your shirt.
It is on my shirt. It's
Because
on
Carla's
my
running.
flyers.
Because Carla is running for New Hampshire Senate.
I am.
In
District 20.
District 20, which is wards 10, 11, 3, and 4 in the village of Goffstown. So if you live in one of those places and you want to vote for sanity for a change, you got to vote for, well, I don't know. Was that actually true? No. You should be voting on September 8th.
I have papers that say I'm sane.
You should be voting on Tuesday, September 8th for Carla in the primary. Everybody's names are on the ballot, which I always get confused between state elections and city elections. I always think if I don't have a primary, I'm not on the ballot. And then I looked at the ballot and I'm like, oh, we are.
Yeah.
So if I don't go to the polls, I'll get the people who go, how come I didn't see you at the polls? And I'm like, because, life.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, I think, this time. I mean, I highly encourage folks back home, if you are watching this and you're not sure if you're going to make it to the polling station, request an absentee ballot.
Just don't wait till the 3rd of September.
No, that's why I'm saying do it
now.
And it's really easy. You just go to manchesternh.gov.
Yep.
You got it. And actually, I noticed today, because I put a little link on my website, carlagarrett.com, and it's right there on the front page now. They made it really easy, so you can find it. It's a big red button and just. And
contrary to what the latest scandal will have you believe, we still do have a post office and mailboxes.
Well, here's the thing, though, is I didn't realize this, and I forget if we talked about this last week, but the difference is actually between what is absentee ballot
and what is mail-in are not the same.
And what is mail-in voting. Right. And I think it's important for people to understand.
Because they conflate the two.
Because absentee ballot voting means that there are checks and balances. It means that you've asked for it and it's coming to your house, and the moderator knows it was you. So there's like a link between the two actions.
The dots have to make sense.
But mail-in voting is when they just take all those voter lists,
and just mail
which often have dead people on or people
and
who
send them a legitimate ballot.
So then you receive a ballot in the mail, and so there's no checks and balance, because let's say at my house, that I bought 4 years ago, I wouldn't be surprised if the original homeowner was still on a list somewhere. Right. Now, obviously, you wouldn't go down to Goslar and go vote because he is deceased.
Right.
But if a ballot came in there and you were not a scrupulous person, then, someone might be like, hey.
I can just fill this out and mail this in, because who's going to know?
And then the other thing I saw that I thought was pretty interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, but I did do a post on Facebook, was I guess, we've given all this power to our health officials now.
Too much power to our health officials.
Too much power
I'm with you on
by a wide swath.
Yes.
If for any other reason to vote for me, just vote for me so I can put some checks and balances in for all this crazy stuff that's happening. But what they said now is the health officials of New Hampshire,
Department of Health and Human Services,
don't really know who that is. They're not elected. They're appointed, but they have all these new rights, including, the ability to go onto your property and for any reason, without a warrant, and do whatever they want, including fine you $1,000. But Tammy said we shouldn't talk about that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It is definitely an overreach.
But they have now said that all college students in New Hampshire have to designate their college dorm or college address as their home address, even if the schools aren't opening. And I can only imagine that is some kind of, it's going to create a problem if we do move, say, from absentee. I just feel like there's legitimate,
there's something that makes you, the little spidey sense stick. Because speaking of college students, so in today's Union Leader, there was an article, because for those who don't know, every day for probably the last 2 weeks, not because I'm a naysayer, but because I think it's important that people actually have a balance when it comes to this virus as far as information, because we both will agree that you're constantly bombarded with these horror numbers and these horror stories, and the media is totally clickbaiting. There's one person in some state somewhere who died, and then we're all like, oh my God, everybody's dying. So people have lost that balance. So I've been every day on my Facebook page. Every morning I get up and I click on the state's website because they have data there. Although I will say that New Hampshire Public Radio provides me with better data than the state website does, but that's beside the point. They do some of the work for me. And I post on my Facebook page, which you can't see because it's my private page, but whatever, how many actual cases there are, which we could debate what that means because I don't know. Does that mean actual positive test results, or does that mean does that mean people who are sick or just people who tested positive? And it tells you how many people are hospitalized and how many deaths. And I've been posting that. And then I do the math, which took me a while to get comfortable with because there's too many zeros after the decimal point. So, as of this morning, there are 279 active cases in New Hampshire. Again, I don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean 279 sick people. That number is just barely, because yesterday it was at 2/100ths of 1% of the state of New Hampshire is currently considered having COVID. Now, people will say, well, there's people who don't know they have COVID. I agree. They tested St. A's kids. They had a rule that they had to be tested. Okay, I'm not against that. You're going to be in a dorm situation. They tested 1,823 students, and 2 of them tested positive, neither of which had any symptoms.
Because, it seems like this is not actually so
virulent,
no. Or, and here's the other thing, we keep using this language of viruses and everything, but isn't a coronavirus a common cold?
Well, the common cold is a coronavirus. Coronavirus is a type of viruses, not specifically this.
So
that's
you have the rhinos, and you have the corona,
the H1N1. Right, there's all different types of viruses, and this is. The common cold is a type of...
Now, you could imagine, I don't know, because the media has a financial incentive to keep people engaged.
Because they click on things and they get advertising dollars.
That engagement, right, makes money for them. So they, again, just have this vested interest in keeping your attention, keeping you riled up, keeping your frequency really high.
Yep.
I like to think, imagine if we had spent all these resources telling people how to get healthier.
Yeah.
And then also just, framed it as this is a derivative of the common cold.
Yep.
It seems like, for every one person who dies, the number of people who have it, who have no symptoms. So, it just... I'm not very happy about it.
It's frustrating because I look at it this way. When I look at that number, which is so small.
So that's literally, just for folks back home, that is about 0.00000.
If you're putting it with the percent sign, it's 0.02. If you're not putting the percent sign, there's 3 zeros and then a 2. And interesting, I just stumbled across this because I was looking for something else. I think it was Manchester Inklink or one of the online things posted from a while back the numbers by town. So now I have a new source of information.
Oh no, they're telling me more data.
I clicked on it because I'm thinking, well, it's going to be out of date, and sure enough, it was updated 8/18, which is just today.
Yep,
it is today. Okay, so is that really today? Is today the 18th or the 19th? Today is the 18th. Never mind. So here in Manchester, there are 39 active cases. That is less than 4/100ths of 1%. So Manchester's got a booming almost 1/2 of 10% of 1%. So the number is still so incredibly small. Now, so why do I keep bringing that up? Well, because I think you have to put it in balance. There aren't people dying. New Hampshire has, every once in a while, the death number goes up 1. But
Tammy, if we had looked at the data from last year or 4 years ago for some other flu that has come and gone in the past,
there are people be dying,
and People pass away.
Yes, they do.
The flu is quite dangerous, and it is more dangerous for the elderly. But this idea that we have to be
keep track.
reporting and that
Well, that's what I mean.
is something else is going on. And so that something else that's going on is you have to look at the response of what is happening and then ask yourself, why? I mean, I think we are in for incredible economic devastation.
Could be.
Because it's, I mean, our national debt is so, we should, in New Hampshire, I think we should just start taking care of
us.
Put Granite Staters first, just look at New Hampshire and kind of go, hey, what do we need in this state for us to live free and thrive, for us to prosper, for us to do well? And, I think that, one of the mistakes that was made once we sort of figured out after maybe that first month, I think New Hampshire should have kind of leaned into, we're open for business, reasonable precautions as people see. But the cool thing about leaving people to decide what to do is you actually figure out what the outcomes are. If you take Sweden now, which had a entirely different response, different countries had different responses.
As did different states.
Their graphs all look almost identical.
Right.
You can actually overlay them and go, oh, okay, here was where it came. This was the winter. We go here. Here's the thing that'll happen because we're starting to go into the fall again, and we're doing way more testing and all of that. And you can take that country for country for country,
and it's all the same.
It's almost the same, which means that there wasn't a better or a worse response. What you need is you need the truth and information. You give that to people, and then you let them make the best decision for them, their livelihoods, their families, and their friends and their neighbors.
It's bothers me, not just for my life. Like, I have friends who work at companies that they have stringent requirements on what their employees can do when they're not at work now. Because they ask the question when you go to work every day, have you been at an event with more than 10 people? Not from your household.
Well,
if they have, they can't go to work that day. And I'm like, so for what? For this 0.03%?
So the other annoying thing, or the other frustrating thing that I've identified that is really just getting my goat, and I can't lie to you folks back home, a lot of things are getting my goat lately, but this in particular is that we are creating a new, I believe personally that, we have this emerging police state. It's an outflow from 9/11. Things in America really started to change. We started to go in a more militarized, controlled way of doing life, and it's gotten more and more and more stringent. We've become less and less free, right? So one of the things that is happening with this COVID situation is we are creating a whole new arm of the police state by forcing business owners and business people and employers to be the bad guy. Now, I have a very concrete example. In South Africa, we introduced value-added tax, like right around the time I won the green card and left, right? And so I remember it being this thing where initially I thought, okay, value-added tax, that means there's tax on the goods, so it's more of a consumer tax, it's more consumption-based. I was like, oh, maybe that's fairer at least, right? Like a fairer taxing structure. And then I realized, oh no, basically what the South African IRS did is they've turned every single person into an IRS agent, right? Because now the business has to collect the taxes, which is similar to what we have here in New Hampshire with our rooms and meals tax, right?
And sales tax in other states.
And
not
sales
here.
tax in other states, fortunately not here. Never a sales or an income tax. Let's keep the New Hampshire advantage. But what they've done with all this stuff, all these executive orders, I think we're up to number 65, right, is they're going to the businesses. There was that headline in the newspaper last week that said, the poor ice cream store that was like, we're not the mask police.
Right, don't ask. Because people get off, they lose their mind. And like that ice cream store, people are hitting them saying, why aren't you stopping that person on the street?
But that is also the wrong sentiment. So if you're the person calling the cops or ratting out your neighbors, please stop. Like, that's an unnecessary step. You are like, you're like the bad guy in the Nazi movie. So just like stop. I know you feel noble, but you're not being noble. Just mind your own business. But with these businesses, we are now creating this environment. And so we're on top of everyone being scared of getting sick and germs and like all of that. We're also now pitting people against each other.
Consumers against businesses against...
And it's insane. I read a thing. And at first I was like, oh my goodness, this can't possibly be true. But it is. They are recommending that if you are on a Zoom call,
oh my
from
God,
home,
that was in like Wisconsin.
You have to wear a mask for the optics.
That was, I think, in either Wisconsin or Minnesota, and I thought, that can't be real. That's got to be Babylon Bee, which, by the way, Babylon Bee was shut down on Facebook, I think.
Oh, I haven't seen
because their sarcasm is too confusing for people. But yeah, I saw that too, and I thought, are you for real? Like, but yes, this is for real. I've had these conversations with people when you try, and that's why it's important to have conversations and say, like, I'm no longer afraid of, I really sincerely, consciously noticed about 2 weeks ago that I'm no longer worried, even slightly, about catching this virus. Because it's no longer that scary, because the numbers don't show that I have, and I admit, back in March and April, it's different. But you know what? I realized the numbers mean something to me, because 1,823 kids went to St. A's and only 2 of them, and they didn't even know, so they weren't actually sick. So maybe there's a percentage of New Hampshire that has the virus, but they're not sick.
I think most,
right?
I think that it maybe it even is quite virulent, and that but people have it, but that it's really not that.
And there is a lot of talk about things besides being a healthier person, but like there's a lot of talk now about a drug that's already been out there for a while, ivermectin, which is people are being treated with that, and their sickness is going away like almost immediately. And there's, there's the I can't even say it, whatever, hydro something.
I'm not going to say it, I'll get banned on Facebook.
Right. And, vitamin D.
Can we talk about that, though? So the H word, right? So
hydrochloric something.
Chloroquine, I think.
Something.
But anyway, like, that to me is like one of those things where the red flags just go off, right? So where we see the government's encroachment into every aspect of our lives, which is why people are so hyper partisan and why people are like so angry, and they're doing it to us on purpose. So the only thing you can do is disengage from that sort of relationship. But when I read that certain states had banned
a drug that's already
a medicine that has been on the market for 70 years, I believe, because the president of the United States mentioned it in a context that someone didn't like. When the government is banning medicine for political reasons, we have a problem. Our government is too big, and we need to elect people who understand what the problem is. You cannot, as we just saw for the past 6 months, you cannot diagnose something unless you know what the problem is. And there are a myriad of solutions, not only one solution, but I am very confident that one of the solutions is getting the right people in there to try and balance. That's my thing, right? Like, you've got to be able to balance all these things, and we are wildly, wildly out of whack.
Well, even
in terms of what the relationship is between the government and the individual. Because the way it's supposed to work is we're in charge and the government works for us. This is how it is now, and they're coming for us.
Well, and even, because I know I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too deeply, but even in New Hampshire, I know you're more frustrated with Governor Sununu than I am. Or maybe we're not, and whatever. But the law, like, people are like, how does he get this power? Well, somebody passed a law over here that gave him that power.
Yeah, Lou D'Alessandro, my opponent, passed this after 9/11. So what they did was they were like, oh, we had this emergency. We were caught with our pants down. We must do something. Right. So they wrote these laws that were a vast, vast, vast overreach.
Right.
None of those laws comply even vaguely with the Constitution,
Well,
and no one noticed because no one was using it. And then what happens is people are reactionary, right? So something happens and they're like, we must fix this problem. Let's write words on paper, right? And then they write them and they overreact, they overreach. But because we haven't had any situation to test it
right.
and to maybe dial back some stuff, and I'm sorry, our courts here in New Hampshire have not done us any favors. There have been 5 or 6 or 7 lawsuits, and they just keep saying, these judges just keep saying, we think it's okay. How is it okay to authorize people to come onto your property if no arm of the government is allowed to do that?
Right.
If the police aren't allowed to do it, why are these other people allowed to do it?
The law that you've mentioned that Lou D'Alessandro was the author of, in that case, it needs to have restrictions. It needs to have oversight. There probably does need to be a way for the government to react quickly to a disaster, right? But that doesn't go on and on and on and on.
So, but here's my question too. So, if the relationship between the government and the people was in balance, then I feel like if the government were to react to a pandemic or an emergency situation, we would likely, as responsible citizens, be like, oh, I totally get it. I see why you're doing this. Their bodies stacked in the roads.
Right.
There's a real pandemic. My newspaper is this thick because the obits, of all the people who've passed away, that whole story, right? The problem comes in when they're like, oh, we're grabbing all these rights. The problem we're describing isn't what we're saying it is, and we're going to grab all these new powers for ourselves that we never had and that the Constitution does not authorize.
Right, and ultimately, these decisions need to be, if nothing else, at least be by the legislature, because they are representing you and I. I might not like the results of that either, but you can't just have an open-ended ability on anybody's part. Like we've talked about the Department of Health and Human Services being able to go on people's properties and find them. Why can't, if there's a problem, if this property is causing a health crisis, we're not going to go there, don't go there, then why can't they go to a court? Why can't the health department go to a court and say, we need to access this property?
We've always had processes of how these things should work. So that is why I am so concerned, because we have basically created an entire new department. The Department of Health and Human Services is now authorized to come onto your property for any reason, including a nuisance, which, as far as I could tell, at least in this executive order, is not defined. No. And they have a fining ability of $1,000 a day per, and it's not very clear from the language in here if it's per like person not wearing mask or if it's for the property itself or whatever. So, we're up to 65 executive orders. I'm sorry, I did not elect a king when I voted for Chris Sununu last time. I don't see how we can say that if there are, how many? 0.002% of the state currently have this disease, that we are now creating all these new authorities that can come and violate your constitutional and natural and inherent rights.
So before we run out of time, can I switch subjects?
Yes, and everyone should buy my book.
Well, no, because this is a historical day. Today is Tuesday, August 18th. I did not know this, but Facebook told me. 100 years ago today, the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution was ratified, which gave you and I the right to vote. That's weird. 100 years. It's only been 100 years that women have been able to vote. So when people, sometimes the Constitution does need to be amended, because who would have ever thought that one sex of humans was allowed to vote and one wasn't, just like slavery. Who would have ever thought that somebody would have been able to own another human being? Obviously, that's no more. New Hampshire actually ratified the amendment almost a full year before it was finally ratified. So we've been, we were in the...
Oh, we're always ahead of the curve here in New Hampshire.
Massachusetts was ahead of us, but the rest of New England was behind us. And that brought me to something else. I just want to put this out there if people want to Google it. There's a woman, she happens to be black. Her name is Kim Klacik. That's Klacik. She is a Republican running for Congress in Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
And if you Google Kim Klacik Baltimore and watch her latest campaign ad, it is awesome and good for her. And, she'll probably, end up dead in an alley someplace. But I'm just saying, because she's saying the things that the Democrats in Baltimore, and Baltimore is a nasty, 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 corrupt place, don't want to hear. And she's saying, look, the Democrats have been running this town for decades, and this is what we have. And she's walking through burnt out neighborhoods and talking about the homicide rates and the crime rates. And she's like, I'm black, and this is not doing anything for the black people. She says, all black lives matter, but lives in Baltimore matter, and Baltimore as a city matters, and we have to do something to change it up because what we're doing is not working.
And I think that goes to my point also about sort of regionalism, localism.
It matters. It's easier to fix the things
your
in
own
your
house
neighborhood
first,
right?
Then you help your neighbors,
Yeah.
and then we expand from there. Yeah. Because I think also, people get so caught up in the idea that there are problems over there that we must solve, yep. Right? And I feel like that's how politicians actually manipulate us, right? Because here in New Hampshire now we do have problems that we have to solve, where we're seeing, homeless and things that are in our own backyard. But for a long time, we didn't see that.
Right.
Of course, now one might, say we now have a Democratic mayor. I'm not going to say that's why, but
it does seem to be getting worse.
But I think it's because you get more of what you subsidize. We've talked about this a lot on this show, right? And I think a way to think about it, although it'll sound crass, it's like if you want more homeless people, give them money.
Yeah. Give them money to be homeless.
Because that's what we're currently doing, right? So if we're creating all these services, then we're not really solving the problem. And I drive by that Exit 6
encampment
thing. And I just, it breaks my heart.
Well, it's terrible that there's people that are living like that, and it's terrible for the people in the city that are having to tolerate people living like that. I always come across sounding intolerant, but it's not. I keep seeing people post that there's tents on Bass Island, and I haven't brought myself to go there because it's just probably going to make me crazy, because Bass Island, we spent all sorts of money making it nice. And, can I just go camp in a park in the city? Because I'm pretty sure I have a camper, and I could, just, maybe the city could drop a porta potty so I could, I don't know.
Well, it occurred to me because I'm going to start putting my signs out this week, and I was like, oh, can I just if homeless people could just live anywhere, I'm sure I could just put my signs anywhere, right?
Well, that's like when somebody, I think it was about Nashua, which, by the way, I went to Nashua on Saturday night for a baseball game at Holman Stadium. First of all, we did not have to pay to park outside the stadium. It was very easy to get in and out of Holman Stadium, so that made me wonder. Nashua has a mask mandate. I honestly didn't see people outside in masks, which was good. I didn't understand the logic of why we were supposed to wear masks from the gate to our booth, but not in the booth. Those are
the things that drive me nuts. Like, I also went to a function, and they were like, I had to wear I wore a bandana from the front door of the establishment. Yes. I went in, I turned right, I walked maybe 10 feet, and then I was allowed to take it off.
It's not logical.
It's and that's the frustration, guys. Like, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Like, we're not dumb people. We all have common sense. But we all have common sense. Right. And when you're like, but my real life experience is not actually tracking with what I'm being told, then you need to start to adjust who you're listening to and trust yourself.
Yep, I agree.
So don't forget, buy my book, The Ecstatic Pessimist, now available on Amazon, or if you go to carlagarrett.com.
Oh, I read your Anthony Bourdain story last night. Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, she's making progress slowly but
Little ones.
surely.
I read them once in a while. I'm not
I
a big
sent a
reader.
copy to PJ O'Rourke, so I hope he reads it and gives me a blurb.
That would be nice, right?
Yes.
Okay, so see, we got through the show without losing our minds. Today is the 18th. August is dwindling, sadly.
Come out for the primary,
yeah,
September 8th. Please support me.
Yep.
I really want to do it this time.
Get your absentee ballot if you're the least bit concerned for any reason of going to the polls, or if you work, if you always struggle to get to the polls in time, you can always vote absentee ballot. That's why we have that process in place. Otherwise, enjoy the weather. It's going to be in the 80s this week. It rained last night, which made my plants happy. And we'll be back next Tuesday with more fun with us.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.